Good morning, and thank you all for being here today. My name is Aboujaoude. I'm currently the Chief Technology Officer at Keck Medicine of USC. I'm pleased to join you today for this wonderful conference, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you about various different things that are going on in the industry, and especially one of the items that is close and dear to my heart regarding evolution through chaos. When I first spoke to the leadership for this conference, the idea of coming up with a topic that touches on current times was really important for me. And part of it had to do with the fact that we all were touched by the current events that have transpired in the last few months. A year ago, many of us would have never thought we would be in this position that we are in today. However, things happened outside of our control. We were obligated to evolve, to change, to modify our behaviors, to be able to adapt to the current situation that's transpiring in front of us. While many of this situation impacted a lot of the industries that we touch, we come in contact with on a personal level, on an organizational level, on a business level, a lot of these things were different when it came to healthcare. Healthcare was the root cause of a lot of these situations, and it caused us to evolve in ways we did not anticipate we would need to do. So when we first thought about this topic, the evolution through chaos is an idea of seeing clarity when everything around you is of uncertain nature. We were not able to develop a roadmap or a blue book per se that says, take the next step, go left, go right, and so on, as it pertains to this pandemic and the issues that were going on around us. But somehow we evolved. And in order to do so, we had to think, we had to be ready, we had to plan, we had to have had a goal, a roadmap to help get us to this point. So evolution through chaos is meant to talk about how we evolve as a team, as an organization, and as an industry, and quite frankly, as a culture and as people as well. So when I was looking at evolution, in my mind, evolving is defining. And by defining, what I'm specifically speaking to is defining the steps, defining your goal, where you intend to get to, how you intend to get there, and really developing a methodology to accomplish that outcome that you're desiring and accomplish what you would hope to get to eventually in the not too distant future. So in order to do so, there were three guiding principles that I followed in order to make sure that we are successful at the end of the day. The first one may seem relatively simple and straightforward to you, and to some degree it is, but I believe it's by far the hardest portion of these guiding principles to accomplish. And that has to do with the roadmap. A roadmap is not just an idea. A roadmap is understanding your capabilities. A roadmap is understanding where you desire to arrive at. A roadmap is understanding your product, understanding your service, understanding your team. And then once you do all these things, then and only then are you able to develop a roadmap that helps you attain the goals you're reaching for. You see in my sub-bullet here, I talk about tech is king. And the reason behind this is because with the current times, technology truly is the driver for many things that we do in the environment. We are all meeting here today because we have in some way, shape, or form touched technology or are impacting the industries that we work in through technology. And as a result, tech is truly king. So developing a roadmap means that you're able to outline the steps and the components that it takes to get to the outcome. And this is something that should be happening on an ongoing basis and not something that is completed during a chaotic time. Therefore, you should be evolving and be able to transform yourself through and when there isn't any chaos around you. The second guiding principle for this idea is truly to understand your organization's triggers. What is the heart of your operation? What is your identity as an organization? Where do you aspire to go? Where is the leadership focused? Where's that next step? What's that business roadmap? These things are really crucial. How are you looking to enable your users in the future? Are you looking to enable them through speed? Are you looking to enable them through advancing their capabilities? Are you looking to enable them through mobility? Are you going to offer, are you planning to offer a new in your line of service. These items, these decisions, these discussions are really important in order for you to be able to manage how you develop your roadmap. This is a subcomponent of it. The heart of the operations really speaks to understanding that when the service is developed, how do you intend to offer it to your customers, to your patients, to your consumers? And third, and probably one of the most important components of this entire process, is you must be realistic. A lot of times we leverage chaos to help us leap over different methodologies, different timeframes, different complexities and capabilities, which is certainly something that many of us do and we should continue to do. However, it is really important to set realistic goals that help you accomplish these outcomes in a manageable situation. So realistic goals speaks to being able to define how your team will advance from step 1 to step 2. Being able to maintain operations and yet focus on the evolution that you need to get to. Being able to understand where you fall short in the capabilities realm and where you are leading the path when it comes to advancement and so on. These things are really important to evolving, because one of the most difficult and dangerous pieces of this whole process has to do with evolving and causing more chaos than actually getting clarity and explaining the outcome, the positive outcome that is to be reached during chaos. So let's talk about evolution as a whole from a human perspective. You know, we started relatively simplistic, and we are here today. Many would think that we are advanced, but the reality is, as fast as we are going, we are essentially slowing down again. At the beginning, it was all about survival. It's about survival today. We're trying to survive through a pandemic of significant feat, trying to be able to accomplish and accommodate all the requirements are put forth against us. Many of us were working in the office. All of a sudden, we had to work at home. What did we do? We rushed. We tried to develop a methodology to help us migrate and mitigate the risks and the environment that we were faced with. And we thought of some, very complex ways to get there. We shouldn't. We should be very simple. We should be simple and we should be slow, yet we should be fast in our delivery. Slow in our evolution does not mean that you don't evolve to higher degrees. It simply means that you're evolving with quality, with guidance, with having an understanding of where you need to get to next. We went from slowly moving to running to being able to accelerate through a lot. And then once again, we are slowing down as a culture, as an environment that is demanding too much of us. In the IT space, we often tend to go in phases in our deployment of products, services, and whatnot, which is the absolute right thing to do. However, we need to think of ways where we can reduce the complexity to be efficient in order to be able to manage the outcome and make sure we stick to it. So what are the major points that we need to watch for as we evolve through this? I can tell you from a personal experience, one of the most beneficial items that I had to work on, one of the most important pieces of my guidance as an individual, as a member of the organization, as a leader, is to truly understand our culture. What is driving our business? When we got into this unfortunate pandemic that none of us planned for, we did not introduce ideas that we hadn't originally thought of and or were planning for. And that came from the business drivers that we were working against. And you should ask yourself the question, is your business driver growth? Is it fear? What is driving your business? Is it evolving the industry? And these three items really dictate how you proceed in the future. When we proceeded with growth, we proceeded because we were looking for ways to grow our team, to grow our efficiency. During the pandemic, we introduced technologies that enabled our workforce to be remote, yet have complete access to all the tools and functions that they were utilizing when they were on site. We enabled the business by introducing technologies that allowed our patients and their families that allowed our clinicians to interact and remain safe in order to provide the right quality service and prevent impact and risk to them. Your business drivers should be more about growth, should be more about evolution of industry, and should be less about fear. Truly think about it, because the reality is, if you don't think about it in that function, you're reacting without understanding properly where your services and technologies are intended to go. Have a reality check. Do you truly know how to evolve your workforce and move it from on-premises to remote, for example? Do you truly have the means to mobilize the tool sets and provide these tool sets to your customers, to your users, to your consumers, in order for them to be able to remain efficient? When I first got involved in this whole process, like everyone else early on in this year, from a pandemic perspective, the first thought that came to my mind was how to be able to make sure my family is safe. Second, how am I going to be able to support the organization that I trust in and believe that is doing the right thing for our community, for our customers, for our patients, and so on. And I had to be able to step away from this whole process and identify opportunities for us to work on. So I leaned back on our roadmap that we had been working on for over a year. And that roadmap really indicated and spoke to, we would like to evolve, we would like to lead, and we would like to produce and provide services that we can support on a larger scale. Those services included allowing and enabling our staff to be remote. So we started working on that methodology well before the pandemic came in. Did we know how? We did to some extent, but we certainly brought help to help guide in this evolution, to help arrive at the ultimate state and point that we desire to get to. The second one is, did we know when? We did not know when the pandemic was going to happen. We did not know when issues were going to arise, but we certainly knew when to start. We had a plan, and our roadmap dictated where we're going to get to from a product perspective. Our timeline that we all agreed to certainly helped us accomplish that in a reasonable amount of time that just happened to coincide with the chaos that was taken on and was taking place as a result of what's happening in the environment today. I will have to admit that we had to accelerate a lot of items that we were working on when this was taking place, because the reality is we thought we had more time, and then all of a sudden that was stripped away from us. And do you have the support? I think it's important and crucially important to have the support of your leadership. Having the right leadership in place, having the right leadership with the forethought to see the future, to be able to determine that this team, this function, this department, this tool that we're working on is absolutely crucial to the success and the outcome, and how it would be received in the organization, and how others will be able to adopt to it. So speak to your leadership, have a conversation with them, lay out the plan, understand the steps, but yet get into the details, because I truly believe it's important to explain where the shortcomings are and where the capabilities exist today. In healthcare IT, time is never our friend. It's never our friend. It never has been, most likely never will be. The pandemic crunch certainly has pushed us beyond the limit. We were in a state of chaos. We were not thinking clearly as a society, but yet for some reason, us in healthcare, we tend to adapt to these things a lot more easily than most other organizations or industries do. And the reason for it truly is because we deal with this type of situation on an ongoing basis. For us, having chaos is not necessarily a pandemic. It could be as simple as a localized fire. I'm making light of it, but the truth is it's not. It could be an earthquake. It could be whatever driver. We deal with a level of intensity when it comes to crunch and when it comes to pressure on an annual basis during the flu season. We must not forget that our resources are still regular humans as well. They have needs, they are impacted by what's happening on the outside. So what mitigations have you put in place to help ensure that resources will become available and remain available during that? Has your organizational culture allowed you to build that depth in your environment? And then decisions. Decisions are so crucial when it comes to time of chaos. Are you able to see clarity through this process? So I go back to the roadmap, the first principle that we talked about. We introduced a roadmap to help define the guidelines, to help define the guardrails that we would work within when we are producing and working towards this goal. So when chaos came in and when the world was turned upside down due to what's happening, we did not falter from our goal. We kept focused. What we did do, however, we accelerated our work towards an outcome that would be a lot more in line with the times and the requirements and the needs that were happening in the environment today. It was not easy, but we had to focus on it and we got it done. And we got it done through decision-making, understanding where the business is going, and being real with ourselves. One of the items that I believe is crucially important that is often missed when in the moment of chaos has to do with quality, has to do with accuracy, completeness, and consistent behaviors over and over again. All of you sitting and listening to this session right now will probably be able to give an example of of different instances and different scenarios. When you produced an outcome, when you produced a service, when you produced a product, and because the crunch that you were under, the situation that you were in, you were willing to compromise on quality to a certain degree. However, in the time of chaos, you must focus on quality first, because the truth is, everyone else is not looking at it from the same perspective you are. And therefore, you have to focus on quality to ensure that you are providing a service that others do not have to worry about its effectiveness and its quality, but rather they are just simply happy that it's available for them. And they are confident in the product because it's a complete set of tools, behaviors, processes, workflows, and mechanisms that enable them to be effective in their business and what they're trying to do. So please remember, you have to be accurate, complete, and consistent in your approach. You have to document these pieces. You have to be able to isolate what other items are impacting, but yet you have to be efficient in how you look at things and how you define the next steps in the product offering and in the methodology that you are following. In order for you to be successful, you must have an understanding and a set of non-negotiables. So what are non-negotiables? These are the items that you will not compromise on when you are thinking through and being able to see through all the processes, all the problems, the risks, the negotiations, everything else that's taken place. If you are in healthcare IT, or quite frankly, if you're in IT period, security is absolutely a priority. It is often dangerous to overlook security because security is not a foundation, but yet is a methodology. It's no different than having the basics to run, having the essentials. Security is absolutely, and I always place security up and down the stack rather than a foundation, because the idea behind it is that from the top to bottom, bottom to top, everyone adopts it. It's a way of life, not a requirement. So you must have it as your priority. Even during the time of chaos, the services that you provide must move you forward. They cannot be subpar. And the reason why they cannot be subpar is because simply they have to provide a service that the organization is able to leverage to continue to move you forward. Imagine a situation in healthcare. If you provided a service, but yet your clinicians, your nursing staff, were not able to leverage that, how are we going to impact the ability to provide support to our patients? And it's truly important that the services we provide must move you forward. Moving you forward does not mean you leapfrog over things. In some cases it is, but in most cases, it's simply allowing you to move forward to provide that service. You have to have the business support. Even in the time of chaos, you have to leverage your operational leaders. You have to speak to them. You have to be able to help them understand where the service you're providing fits, agree on what you are and are not able to provide in order to accommodate the business needs. Garnering business support is absolutely crucial. Well, in the moment when this whole pandemic took place, we deployed a significant amount of mobility capabilities across the environment. We did not do so by simply running to the floors and just dropping off devices and leaving. Instead, we worked with our operational stakeholders. We developed agreements. We developed roadmaps, even if they were short, very specific, pointed roadmaps, we did that. And we were able to accomplish that through communications and business support. Quality and integration. You've heard me sprinkle the word quality throughout this presentation so far. And I continue to repeat myself, it is absolutely important that quality is not overlooked. And once again, in healthcare, quality and the ability to integrate with your product set is equally as important, if not more important, than most other functions you provide in the environment. I still, however, believe security is your priority. Lastly, something that's on everyone's mind, yet we tend to be a little bit more relaxed when we're looking at it during a time of chaos, during a point of pandemic, for example. And that has to do with budget. In order for you to get your business support, in order for you to provide quality and move forward and maintain security, it is important for the organizational units, for the organization as a whole, to understand that the budget that you are spending in this time of chaos is not lost once the situation is over. Because the truth is, every situation will come to an end and or will normalize at some point in the future. Therefore, it's really, really important to understand your budgets. And in order to do so requires that you have had a good understanding before the chaotic period began. It requires that you were able to understand what your current environment looks like. Do you know what your services that you provide may be? Do you have them documented? Do you understand who and where they touch? How often are they used? Who likes them and who dislikes them? Do you understand the value of what you offer and the services that are offered? When was the last time you garnered feedback on a service that you are providing? When was the last time you involved the business in a decision-making process regarding the IT services that you offer today? A step that I think is really important. And while I'm on the topic of budget, I'm speaking of engagement with the business. In my mind, those go hand in hand. The ability to secure a budget in the time of chaos is defined by the trust that you have accomplished and you have secured with the organization. That trust comes from business support, from quality, and from being able to secure the environment and maintain a go-forward direction. One of the most important pieces of managing and evolving in a time of chaos is risk management. Looking at this slide, you see buzzwords like strategy, control, risk management, mitigation. Almost everything that we do in our environment today has to do with risk management. One of the most regulated industries out there is healthcare. And the reason for it is because we can truly impact someone's life. And as a result, we must understand what risks are, how are they defined, where do we look for risks, how do we accomplish an understanding of a risk, and quite honestly, what are we willing to accept? So I go back to understanding your organization's goal, something we spoke about at the beginning of the slide, and understanding the business drivers, right? Are we evolving because of growth, because of fear, or because of industry leading the industry in a specific product and or service? Why is it important to understand that? It's because it has a direct correlation to risk management. Depending on which one of the three items and what's the driver behind your evolution, has a direct correlation to managing risk, and has also a direct correlation to how you mitigate risk. How do you transfer the risk that you are capturing today into an output that is accepted, into an outcome that is welcomed, into a desired belief that you can make things better. So evolving through chaos does not remove your responsibility from having to maintain and understand risk management as it pertains to your environment. So what is accepting and defining risk? What is risk management? Risk management simply speaks to planning ahead. Not a single organization that I'm aware of all of a sudden began in the time of pandemic to the degree that would cause us to be speaking about it today. And what I mean by that is we either all work or have worked or will continue to engage with organizations that have started most likely before a time of chaos. A service line may have started in the time of chaos, but an organization usually does not. So you must plan ahead. You must plan ahead. And planning ahead simply speaks to defining and understanding where you can introduce services in the environment. Planning ahead, understanding your capabilities. I go back to the third principle. Be realistic. Understand your limits and where you can get to and what you're able to do. Have a vision. Having a vision speaks to being able to understand that even though you're here today, you need to get to this point in the future. That is in lockstep and in parallel with a roadmap. A roadmap speaks to the functionality. A roadmap speaks to the capability that you would like to enable. A vision speaks to the strategy. A vision speaks to the capabilities that you will offer as part of a much larger environment. And then you must push the limits. In the moment of chaos, it is almost unavoidable. You will make decisions that will be pushed and will be driven in ways that are not normal with your normal operating procedures. These are limits that will push. These are limits and scenarios that you will be able to compromise on, but yet even when you compromise on these limits, you must not avoid and or ignore your non-negotiables. And also, one of the things to keep in mind, in the evolving through chaos, in the time where there's a lot of uncertainty and unclarity from an overarching perspective, you're able to get the organization to follow you, to help provide a much better way, and be able to accept pushing the limits a little bit, capitalize on that. Lastly, in this one, and defining risk, it's okay to start slow. And the reason why I say it's okay to start slow is because in most situations, most individuals don't really know where to start. But if you have a roadmap, if you have a vision, if you have a plan and you're willing to push the limits, your start may be slow, but your evolution will be fast. Your evolution will help you determine how to get to that end state much quicker. I tell you, in the period right before the pandemic, we, like I mentioned earlier in the conversation, we had a plan and we were working very hard and actively managing moving to the cloud. And we had been there for quite some time, but our capabilities needed to be scaled to do so. So while we started slow, our slow start happened before the pandemic. What we did during the period of chaos was ratchet up that speed, go from 0 to 60 in figuratively speaking, a few seconds, and being able to push the limit to accomplish and accommodate the needs of the organization. Many of you will state, or many of you will think during this conversation that these are relatively straightforward type items that we are discussing today. And the truth is they are. But from an IT perspective, they're actually quite complicated. And they're complicated because they essentially speak to, have you been focused on the growth in the right way? Have you invested enough time in order to make sure you build an environment that is scalable? An environment that can scale up and out, an environment that can add features and functions. Very few people, to my knowledge, went out and purchased a ton of different devices when that happened. Instead, they leveraged what they had in place. Yet some certainly rushed and received some pieces of equipment to help enable their workforce that did not have a vision to be mobile per se or remote. And that makes sense to some degree. But how do you keep it simple? How do you provide a service that does not require you to rely on a piece of hardware that all of a sudden became exceptionally difficult to attain because of supply chain problems? And that's what I mean by start slow. Starting slow means you start early and you build an environment that is scalable from that perspective. Evolving through chaos, in my mind, is an idea, is a vision, is something that you start early on, because chaos is not planned. You can't plan for chaos. You can't even plan for problems. What you plan is, how do I change? How do I evolve? How do I grow in the process of doing these things? I want to thank you for taking a few minutes to listen to me today. And I appreciate the fact that we were able to discuss this topic, and happy to take any of your questions. Thank you all very much.